welcome back to Forza Horizon 4, starting off talking about Horizon 5. The full car list, as you probably know by now, has been released. The car list from launch is now out, and there are a few absences I noted, one of them being the Cadillac limo, and the other one being the Volkswagen IDR. And that makes me sad, because the ID.R was one of my favorite vehicles in Horizon. It was so nice to drive. It had no top speed in any way, shape, or form, but around the corners, it was the best car in the game by light years. So not seeing it in Horizon 5 when we have proper racetracks in the game from launch makes me sad. Makes me quite sad, actually. And I thought, what better way to send it out, at least for now, they might add it in a future update, but for now, let's send it out in the style and go back to where it shined, our mountain pass hill climb. It won that. It led the entire series from the first episode to the last. In fact, it was some 2 seconds faster than the next fastest car by the end. Now that's bone stock against bone stock cars. So why not up the ante a little bit? And I completely maxed out the ID.R, 1,000 horsepower, all-wheel drive, less weight, bigger tires, whole shebang, X-Class. And then, we take that car around the course, and see if any car with any modifications can beat it. And we start off with the ID.R as a baseline. Again, 1,000 horsepower, X-Class, all-wheel drive. So it's the same fantastic hill climb monster, but even more powerful. The stock went about 670 horsepower, about that much, which is not much. And it really struggles on the straightaway. And it still does. It only hits about 160, 170, but it is significantly faster than the stock 145 mile an hour top speed of the original. But it still has the same, if not more grip, and it has even more acceleration out of the corner. So, the original did a 105 something up this course, and I expected this to be even faster, and it did. In fact, it did a 1 minute .005, so 5 seconds faster, basically. It couldn't quite break the 1 minute mark. If I was a better driver, maybe, but it couldn't quite do it. Now, that's still an incredible time. It's 5 seconds faster, no, 7 seconds faster than anything else that's gone around this course, besides the stock ID.R. So, it's one hell of a benchmark time, and well, we got some crazy cars to try and face it. This was our first test, if you will. The Koenigsegg Ford RS 200. Now, I chose this because it's one of the best X-Class stunt cars in the game, so it's worth a shot. 1,350 horsepower, all-wheel drive, less than 3,000 pounds. It's insane. It's by far the fastest rally car in the game. But it doesn't mean it's the fastest car in the game. Just because it's good at stunts doesn't mean it's good on this course, unfortunately. And it wasn't really. You can see, like that, it just does not have the same grip as the ID.R. And while other cars can get away with having so much more horsepower and so much better acceleration than the ID.R, it can just run away. This can't do that. It loses too much time in the corners to make up for that acceleration. So it struggled. It did a 106.6. It was the only car, in fact, not to beat the ID.R, like the stock ID.R, despite being an X-Class. It gave it a good shot. I mean, that would be the second fastest time ever recorded on this course, but it's not quick. It's not. It does not have the grip, and while it has fantastic acceleration, it needs more. It needs bigger tires. It needs less weight. It needs more aerodynamics. The ID.R had a hill climb body kit. This definitely does not have that. So, disappointing. Yes, I thought it would do a little better, but ultimately not that surprising. We move from Ford to the other American automaker, Dodge. Specifically the ACR Viper, which, despite being a road car, might actually be the closest to the ID.R in terms of aerodynamics. It's nothing fancy, no DRS, no activator, no, just one really big wing. And it's all-wheel drive, and it has 1,200 horsepower, but instead of being electric, it's an 8.4-liter twin-turbo V10. And when you combine that with the all-wheel drive and the phenomenal grip the ACR has, it's pretty amazing to drive. I love how the ACR handles. It's a brilliant machine. And as such, it was an entire second, 1.1 seconds to be precise, faster than the Koenigsegg RS200. That still means it only did a 105.5, which, no slouch, that's faster than a Jesco, but, it's not enough to beat the ID.R, and I think the only thing that this held back on was the weight. It's a proper road car, so it's one of the heaviest cars on the grid at 2,900 pounds. Which is saying something, I know, but still, that's a fact. And it also had a little bit of understeer from the all-wheel drive conversion. A few of the cars had understeer issues because of the conversion. That's just how Forza works with those things, and I imagine real life too, although I don't know anyone who all-wheel drive swapped a Viper, so there's no real input on that. But understeer and just general weight, I think, held it back, but still, for a mass production road car, not a bad shout. We go from a really big wing to a really crazy one. Yes, this is the Zenvo TS RS. And yes, it has the wibbly-wobbly active aerodynamic thing that I don't think works. I remember reading some of the physicists talking about it, aerodynamics, and they said it wasn't really working in practice. Principle isn't a bad idea, but I don't think it works in practice. Either way, it's a novel idea, and I think it was cool to try it, and it just looks funky. Now, the rest of the car is also pretty impressive, 1,400 horsepower all-wheel drive, but it is just as heavy as that Viper, so yeah, better power-weight ratio for sure, but it's much more old-fashioned, even more old-fashioned than the Viper, which is saying something, because it's a Zenvo. I mean, you saw their review. Their cars are known for not having the most advanced chassis in the world, but it still was blisteringly fast. He broke the sub 5-second barrier, so 104.8 basically, which is, you know, we're getting there. We're within 4 seconds, 4.2, but it's again not enough. And we are starting to get into the pretty serious cars here, so we're gonna have to try something else if we want to get more extreme. We're certainly ramping up the horsepower figures. The 1,600 horsepower Koenigsegg Jesco. It's, well, a beast. It can go 300 miles an hour depending on the aerodynamic package you have on it. This one is obviously the more downforce orientated version, and the usual all-wheel drive, race tires, big tires, etc. It's the most powerful car here by an easy 200 horsepower, which is crazy to think about, but it is. This was the closest any car ever came stock to beating the ID.R. It was originally just 0.02 of a second slower than the ID.R's original 107 time. That was then trounced by the 105 set by the ID.R in the last episode, but this was the closest any car ever came. And in X-Class, it was pretty impressive, 0.7 of a second faster than the Zenvo. We're getting closer. We're almost at the sub 104s, but we're not quite there yet, and honestly, if this can't do, we're gonna have to go even crazier, because, well, the Jesco is probably the most extreme road car we'll have. We got one more coming up, but certainly the most extreme traditional road car we have here. Like I said, one must ramp it up if they want to succeed, so we're going pretty hardcore to the Ferrari F50 GT welcome pack. Yeah, we're going hardball now. And you're going to be hearing this engine a lot from now on, FYI. This thing, though, is the original source of that 6-liter V12, I recall. It's insane. twin turbocharged, all-wheel drive, the usual, but it weighs 2,000 pounds even with all-wheel drive. And it's the F50 GT, one of the surprisingly most grippy cars in all of Forza. I say surprisingly, it's a non-race car, race car thing. I think it was built for the GT1, but still, it's ridiculously OP in S2 class racing. So, in X class, it's even faster. I actually didn't build the engine up all the way to the max. I built it up to a measly 1,185 horsepower as opposed to 1,200 because of the weight distribution and power-weight ratio. But either way, even with the pitiful horsepower number that we got, it still did a 102.9. It was 1.2 seconds faster than Koenigsegg. Yeah, that's ridiculous. The Koenigsegg is one of the fastest cars in the world, certainly with plates on it. And the Ferrari F50 GT welcome pack just made it eat its tire smoke. But saying that, it's still nearly 3 seconds off the pace of that ID.R, which I think just gives you some context as to how insane that ID.R is. That this incredibly powerful X-Class car got trounced by the electric hill climb car. Remember how I said that the Jesco was the most powerful and crazy normal road car that we have? This is what I mean by the abnormal, for the other side of that, because this is the 911 GT3 RS pre-order. This has the Ferrari V12 that I mentioned earlier. How they managed to fit a V12 behind the rear axle of a 911, I don't understand, but technically Porsche Forza pre-order editions allow that to be. This is another one of those crazy OP S2 class cars. In fact, it's even more OP than the Ferrari, and this was the second car that I built after the Koenigsegg RS200. So when this did a 102.2, I thought I was going to do pretty good on this challenge. Apparently that proved to be a very difficult target to beat. The Porsche is insane. It's fast, it's all-wheel drive, it's grippy, it's got great acceleration, has great turn-in, it's a Porsche 911 at the end of the day. It's very well set up, it's well balanced. And the massive V12 with twin turbos somehow does not ruin that balance, despite being a rear-engine car designed for a flat 6. Forza's weird, man. Forza's weird, that's all I gotta say. We do have one more road car. One more extreme trick, because the pre-order is one of the best cars you can get in this game for X-Class. So, you really do have to get sneaky if you want to go even faster. And that name is the Mosler MT900S. S stands for street in this case, because this is basically a road legal, I guess, Le Mans racer, an IMSA endurance racer, whatever you want to call it. This is another one of the top 10 X-Class cars in the game. I think this is the go-to around the Goliath, the proper Goliath, if I recall correctly. Like I said, I was pulling out the big guns on this one. And this, again, has that Ferrari F50 GT engine, 1,185 horsepower, just over 2,000 pounds, but it is somehow even grippier than the Ferrari, which just boggles the mind. But since it has the same engine and a similar weight, it can't be that much faster, right? Sure, unless you count 3 seconds faster as not much faster. In fact, it was so fast that it did a 59.940, also known as 0.6 of a second faster than the Volkswagen IDR. Houston, we have a victory. I'll be honest, I thought I wouldn't be able to beat the IDR. I built the Mosler and the next car last because nothing was working, and I genuinely didn't think it was possible. We were still 1.5 seconds off the pace with the 911 GT3, and the Mosler did it. the Mosler took down the X-Class maxed out, tuned up IDR on a hill climb circuit. Granted, it's not exactly the most technical circuit. There are certainly tighter, twister ones that the IDR would decimate all comers on. But the Mosler has so much speed that it almost doesn't matter how much grip the IDR has, because this has just enough to keep up with it, and then so much more power that it will just blast off into space. The fastest car in a straight line was the Jesko at 220-ish down the straightaway. This was pretty close at 213, and the IDR was at 165. So that helps a lot. And then being able to carry an incredible amount of corner speed, well, that's just a bonus. You can imagine my surprise then when after all of that praise I gave the Mosler, it didn't win. Not only did it not win, it didn't win by a considerable margin given the speed of these cars. No, this won, the MC12 Corsa. This does not have the F50 V12. This has the Enzo/MC12 GT1 V12, which makes a 1300 plus horsepower, all-wheel drive, but it's a full-on FIA spec GT1 race car. It's not a track special, it's not a road car, it's a full-on GT1 endurance racer. So the grip is off of the scale, and when you combine it with 1300 horsepower, it's simply unstoppable. It's not quite the nicest to drive. I still think the Viper was the most consistent, apart from the IDR, of course. But this thing gave it a good run for its money, and it did a scary, honest to God, scary 59.425 second run. It's half a second faster than the Mosler. It's a full second faster than the Volkswagen. It's an insane machine. I love it. I always knew the Maserati was quick. I've driven it in the past for reverse gear episodes and for various Forza events, but I did not realize that given the right track and the right, circumstances, it could be not only the IDR, but the Mosler. Because the Mosler was like the best X-Class car in the game. And the Maserati was not in the top 10, but given the right track, one that focuses on high-speed cornering, such as this one over bumpy-ish terrain, the MC12 is unstoppable. Because none of these runs were particularly bad. These were all good runs that I would take any day of the week. I've done this course enough, I've driven these cars enough, I did practice with them the whole 9 yards. And the MC12 takes it by a comfortable margin. It's 7 seconds faster than the Koenigsegg RS200. It's a full second faster than the IDR. It's an insane machine. I love it. I wouldn't have any other vehicle, really. It's probably one of my favorite cars to be added to Forza in a while. Ironically, another car that I do not believe is in the Horizon 5 car list. Forza, get your act together. I think the Mosler's in there. But everything else, MIA. Very sad. But, hey, at least I sent them off in style. But that will be it for this episode of Forza Horizon 4. I'll be back with more